we always do a little bit of house cleaning. We do record these, as everybody knows, so hit the got it, and then we're good to go. Don't record them. They live on the back end for membership. And all of us are going to mute once we get started here, and if anyone's got questions, we'll unmute that. We just expect good conduct, civil discourse if anybody gets out of line at any point in time, and we do this every time. We've never had a problem, but we've set this up so we're not going to tolerate any shenanigans or bad behavior. It will be up front and professional, and we're not going to ever have a guest feel uncomfortable. Don't have any news updates right now. Might come back to that though in just a little bit. Isaak Edikauskas, did I pronounce that properly? Got you muted.
Yeah, it's Edikauskas.
Edikauskas, very good. A grassroots engagement director for Americans for Prosperity, and I absolutely love that acronym, GED. I think it's phenomenal. And I have a PhD. Not many people know it, but that's a public high school diploma. It's a PhD. I have a college degree with a PhD is my favorite. So a little bit, and I asked Isaak if he would give me a bio. And we've met a couple of times, and so I'm going to fill in some gaps, but I love the bio that you sent through. So in way of introduction, Isaak says he was a frustrated activist who wanted to make his community better. He didn't know how to do it or where to start, and a grassroots organizer mentored him, showed him how to organize and inspire others in the community. And now he gets to be that person for others. He organizes individuals around the principles of liberty and gives them an outlet to make positive change. It's his mission to build communities of open-minded people who value their liberties and are ready and willing and able to take action to defend them. And I'll tell you what, if that's not the exact kind of people we're looking for, you could have written our biography or the target market for 1776. The other thing I will say is, Isaak, you inspire me just because of your enthusiasm, your knowledge, your ability, your go get 'em attitude, and the fact that you're young and you see all the opportunities in front of everybody is inspiration to me, and I'm sure it's going to be to others as well. So the other interesting thing I'm going to throw out is, if I can do this, something personal. Isaak was in fact struck by lightning and lived. So how many people in the world do you know who can say that? So we have a very, very special guest on tonight, and Isaak, take it away. Your topic is how to build a long-term grassroots movement and enlighten us.
Yeah, well, thanks, Rod. I appreciate you guys having me on, and I've really liked getting to know you over the last couple of months. We've met up a few times, and I can tell you're a huge asset for the principles of human freedom in Kalispell and Flat County, and really like what you guys are doing with this syndicate personally around the country. It seems like a great opportunity for people to take advantage of and work with you guys. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I guess I'll jump right into it. I guess it's important to know a little bit about who I am and why I do this, and really my background of how I got involved in all this. It's usually people's first question for me. I'm 25 years old, organizing politically in Montana, and people are like, how did you find this? How is this possible? And I would really like to blame my mother for this. I was homeschooled through fourth grade all the way through 12th grade. Great option, worked very well for me. The public school system really failed myself and my siblings, and my mom made that tough call when we were in fourth grade to pull us out and homeschool us. And I've got all the respect in the world for her doing that, getting me out of that system. And my political beliefs really got started in 2011 or 12 when Ron Paul was running for president again. And I remember being a little kid going to Tea Party rallies. My mom was a huge Ron Paul supporter, and not really understanding exactly what was happening in 2007 and 2008, because I was a little kid. And then moving forward in 2012, I could, hear what he was saying, hear what he was talking about, and it really made a lot of sense to me. And after that moment, I really dove headfirst into reading, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, the articles that founded this country, the people who founded this country, their ideas, and their respect for individual liberty and just the way they thought about things. Really just made a lot of sense to me. And I went to college at Michigan State University with that foundation of human freedom, that foundation of independence. I grew up working on a farm, the foundation of hard work and the payoff from that. And when I went to college, I got involved with Young Americans for Liberty, which is a youth organizing organization. They organize on college campuses across the country, and got involved with them, started our group at Michigan State University. And for the first year, we really struggled getting people to come out to our meetings. A campus of 60,000 students. We would have meetings every week. We'd have pizza for everybody, and like 3 or 4 people would show up, maybe if that. Sometimes it was just me and my other friends who helped me start the group. That summer, we went and got pretty professional training. All of us, the whole organization, put on this conference. And that summer, we got to hear from expert trainers from across the country who've been doing this stuff for their entire lives. And it was at that moment where I realized that we were frustrated trying to figure out how to get people to our meeting, because we didn't really know what to do. We had no books to tell us what to do. There was no blueprint or checklist. We were just a bunch of people with passion who cared about these ideas and were willing to do something, but we didn't know what to do. They gave us the toolkit, tactics and strategies of how to actually build a grassroots group on your campus. From there, I went back to college that sophomore year, and that first semester, I went from being a top of the class, great student, to just having the worst grades that you could possibly imagine. I was failing pretty much every single class because I wasn't going to class anymore. I was just on my campus all the time. We had this giant beach ball we'd roll around called the free speech ball. Students can come on and write on whatever they want on it. And it represents your First Amendment right. It's a physical theater representation of your First Amendment right. And we would use this ball across Michigan, roll it around campuses, and people would flock to us. Hey, what are you guys doing? And we talk to them about the First Amendment. We talk to them about the rights of the individual. And we do this to try to figure out like who are our people? Who are these people? Who's interested? And the people whose eyes lit up when we started talking about the principles of human freedom, those people, we would, compile them into a list, reach out to them and give those people a phone call and invite them out to our meetings. And we saw those meetings go from something where we had 3 or 4 people to having like 20 or 30 people showing up at the meetings in just a couple weeks by deploying those tactics. During that journey, I got involved with the Leadership Institute, Morton Blackwell's Leadership Institute, great organization. Their mission is to identify conservative-minded activists, young people, and train them, give them the tools required to go out and be successful. And I started working with one of their field representatives, Nathan Burning, who now runs an awesome pro-life organization called Let Them Live. Him and his wife run that fantastic organization. If any of your listeners are pro-life, I'd recommend looking at that organization, Let Them Live. But we were on a campus one day at Kellogg Community College in Michigan, and we were there. It was a series of campuses we had been to over the past couple of weeks, and we were there specifically because they had unconstitutional speech policies. At this campus, they had a free speech zone at the back of campus, basically next to a trash compactor where nobody walked. In order to use the zone, you had to go get paperwork filled out, apply to use the zone. You even had to have your material that you're handing out stamped and approved by the university, which in this case happened to be pocket constitutions, US constitutions. We were arrested on that campus that day for handing out those constitutions outside of the free speech zone. And that was really the moment for me, sitting in handcuffs in the back of a cop car with my brother in Liberty, realizing that we were going to jail for handing out our Constitution. We were arrested by officers who took an oath to uphold that document. And this whole thing was just a step into a different dimension, a different level of thinking about this work. Realizing that, no paper document can will preserve your liberty unless you're actively fighting for it every day, every day. The Constitution is a check that we have to hold government to constantly. There are so many organizations where their sole purpose is to sue the government because they break their own rules and they assault our constitutionally protected liberties. After that, after getting out of jail, we got bailed out. I left school the next week. I put in my paperwork to drop out. I left school, didn't really know what I was going to do, but I knew that I wasn't going to be an engineer. That's what I was going to school for. Wasn't going to be an engineer. That stuff didn't interest me anymore. This fight interested me. It got me moving. It motivated me like nothing else in my life at the time, and it still does. And so I left school, took an internship in Washington, D.C. with Young Americans for Liberty, and then really just didn't like DC at all. I was there for 8 months. I'm a country boy from northern Michigan, and that place is a concrete jungle filled with tyrants. And I didn't like it at all. The Leadership Institute gave me an opportunity to go out to California. Went out to California, to Berkeley, California, really in the heat of it. After the presidential election of 2016, it was absolutely chaotic. And we went out there for the sole purpose of, if we can organize in Berkeley, if we can do that in the Bay Area of San Francisco, find liberty-minded people, then we could do it anywhere. And what we found in California by going out, talking to students, putting ourselves out there, was that there are so many people walking around thinking the same thoughts that we have. You know, they're thinking something is wrong with the system that we have, especially these young college kids. Something's wrong with the system. And the first thing they hear in college is socialism is the answer to this problem. Socialism is the answer to this problem. There is no mention of the other side of things. You know, what if we tried maximum freedom? You know, what if we followed the principles of human freedom that we know work? What if we tried that? Maybe that could work. When we started talking to students about these ideas, their eyes would light up. And in about a year, we organized over 100 students throughout the Bay Area. We filed a lawsuit against UC Berkeley, a federal lawsuit, who they were infringing on our First Amendment rights by not allowing us to be a recognized group. They cited some weird policy that they had where no groups can be alike. Our lawyers at Alliance for Defending Freedom were fantastic. They looked at that and they said, well, you know, you've got 7 socialist groups, you've got 2 Democrat groups, you got 6 different groups for reptiles, but you guys don't want to have more than one liberty-minded group on your campus, which at that time was the Libertarian Student Group. We sued them over that and won. We went on to sue a bunch of little schools in California. One of them came out with a free speech permit. It was a piece of paper in black letters, big black, huge 24-point font on the top. It said free speech permit right on there, which our lawyers got a kick out of. But the key takeaway here was that there are people walking around waiting for somebody like you or me to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, have you been thinking about this stuff? Because we've been thinking about this and we are noticing problems, and we've got a group of people who meet regularly who all share the same ideas and the same ideals and the same principles, and we're actively trying to figure out how we can make a difference in the system. And they're like, really? We had no idea this was a thing. That is huge. That is huge. That means that there are people like that here in Missoula, where I'm at. Here in Missoula, there are people who are just walking around waiting for us to show them a different opportunity, show them a different pathway to doing things, to change the way they think about the world. They're waiting for somebody to come along and do that. And unfortunately, the strongest voices most of the time are voices who are supporting big government. They want to look at government as the solution to every single one of our problems, when we've been doing that for a very long time. And government has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger since its inception. And we've really forgot about the other key aspects of society. At Americans for Prosperity, we teach that there are 4 key pillars of society. There's education, community, business, and then government. And we have been putting everything into the government pillar for the longest time. government and education now have morphed together, pretty much have morphed together. We've seen our communities fizzle away. When I moved into my apartment in Missoula, I went and introduced myself to my neighbors, and the gal next door to me, who recently passed away, rest in peace, she said nobody had done that in 30 years, where she's lived there for her entire life. We've lost our sense of community in this country as we have been delegating the responsibilities that we hold as individuals to uphold our community and maintain our culture to our government, which I think is a real killer. It's a real killer. That's what motivates me. So after that experience in California, seeing people's eyes light up, realizing that this is possible, if we can do it in the Bay Area, then we can do it anywhere. I got promoted as the regional director for California, Alaska, Nevada, Arizona, and Hawaii with Young Americans for Liberty. I moved back to DC to take that job, which I considered a sacrifice because I really hated that place. Still is not my favorite place to visit at all. On the bottom of the list, but moved back there for the work, organized people in California and those other states I mentioned, and did a lot of good, changed a lot of lives. We probably, in my time with that organization, we probably influenced thousands of different students in one way or another. But I reached a point where, I'm realizing that I need to reach a different level with this stuff. And campuses is a great place to start. They're fantastic. It's a great place to get your feet wet, cut your teeth, figure out the basics of organizing, but it's difficult. Campuses, they present barriers. They're not in session all the time. Your classes are constantly changing. You're losing people every 2 to 4 years, basically. Sometimes every year, depending on how people's things line up. And so we've got to go bigger than that. Americans for Prosperity was that organization that I found where I looked through what they were doing. I looked through their mission statement, their vision, right? Their vision, which I'll read right here. I've got a card here. So we're working to move towards a society based on the principles of human progress, one of equal rights and mutual benefit, where everyone has the opportunity to live a life of meaning and succeed by benefiting others. Okay, sounds great, but what does that actually mean? Americans for Prosperity is a policy organization. We take these ideas of these principles, right? Dignity, openness, bottom up, mutual benefit, and self-actualization. We take those 5 principles and we apply them to how we make policy. We're trying to pass bills that limit the ability of government to interfere in the marketplace, or limit the ability of the government to interfere in the family, limit the ability of the government to interfere in your daily life, because we believe that bottom-up solutions for things, it's the best way to do it always. A bureaucrat in Helena or Washington can only know so much. They can only have so much knowledge on issues, and they definitely can't have all the knowledge. They don't know what's best for me. They don't know what's best for my family or my neighbors. I don't know what's best for my neighbors. I have no clue. They know what's best for them. So at AFP, they use this bottom-up way of doing things. It's very human. It's very human. It's based in reality. And looking at the policies that they get passed and the policies that they try to stop, it was very clear to me that this is the place. That was one aspect. The other aspect was the culture. Culture is very important to me. If you're working with people in this movement full-time, you are blood brothers in my mind. You're here working for a goal. We are the revolutionaries of our time. Whether you're working for AFP or doing what you guys are doing, we're in the same sphere over here, working for a shared vision. And the culture at this organization is one that I've never experienced. I get emotional about it sometimes, about just how human it is, how based in reality it is, and how they've given me a space where I can, with autonomy, go out and be a principled entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur. We've got entrepreneurs that go out and try to make money. They start a business, they take risks. We do that with people. My job is to go out and find people who are thinking in a way that we're thinking. They're saying, hey, there's something wrong with this. Obviously this isn't a Republican versus Democrat thing. Obviously there's something bigger here. And there's something that has to change. And there's underlying principles laid out in the Declaration of Independence that we need to go back to. We need to use those as our North Star and go out and find people who share those values, get them organized, and get them active in their local, state, federal governments. Yeah, so that's my kind of long-winded intro of who I am, why I do this stuff. I came to Montana with the goal of figuring out how to build a long-term grassroots movement here. And we can take these ideas anywhere. It presents some barriers. One thing Rod and we've talked about is the differences between how people on the left or on the right, and not politically speaking, terms of beliefs, right, principles. They're different. They think differently. On the left, you've got a lot of collectivists. They see their power as their group. Their group defines their power, not necessarily the individual or the power of the individual, but the power of the collective. On our side of things, we see everybody as individuals. At least I see everybody as individuals. I don't necessarily see groups of people. I see individual people out there doing what's best for themselves. Man acts. And that presents certain barriers when we're trying to organize long term, because I'm sure, as you guys have seen, when something happens, like take the COVID lockdowns 3 years ago almost. Wow, that's flown right by. Take the COVID lockdowns. When they start shutting down businesses, when our oxes are getting gored, then people on the right sort of naturally organize. They naturally organize, they group together to try to go out and attack their perceived enemy. But then they get a victory or they lose, whatever the outcome is. And we've noticed this sort of wave where it peaks and then it drops off. And sometimes it drops off for years. And we have serious problems when the grassroots doesn't stay organized. It's impossible to keep your government in check, to keep your legislators accountable when you're doing things in a chaotic, sporadic fashion, where you're organizing every time something happens. You're basically reacting to the situation. What my vision is to put us back on the court, right, where we're not reacting. We're always reacting in some sense, but for the most part, we change our paradigm where we're not reacting, where we're planning and we're acting. We are actually mapping out, what do we want the future to look like? What are our policy goals that we want to advance, and how do we do it? We're not reacting. We are not a reactionary organization. We are thought out, methodical, and we have serious goals for changing policy. And the only way that it's possible is if we get people, right, regular everyday people, to show up to meetings, come and work with us, learn what our organization does, and finally take action with us. We endorsed John Fuller up in Kalispell this past primary season. He's going to be a major policy champion for education reform, regulatory reform, criminal justice reform out of the Flathead. And that's a victory the grassroots can take right there. They can take that victory and they can put it on their mantle. We've got to get 100 John Fullers in there. We've got to do that across the state, because when the grassroots is active, and they're active all the time, and they're constantly organized, they're constantly trying to figure out what is going to be best for the future. How can we further expand our mission here? Then you've got real power. You've got real power that you've created. You didn't have to take it from anybody. You didn't have to necessarily win any elections here. This is real power of the grassroots. It holds weight. And I saw this in my the last legislative session. We had a great legislative session passed. The governor signed 32 of the bills that we supported. But when we're up there testifying on awesome legislation, like we legalized raw milk in Montana last legislative session, we had people showing up who were like us. We're professional activists. We are not your mechanic down the street who shows up to the legislative session. It's different. It's a different type of message. When the grassroots shows up to legislative session, people listen. I saw the difference between some legislation where it's just professionals up there advocating for it, professionals up there advocating against it, and just the energy in the room is different. When you had, I think it was that heartbeat bill I was up there, we were doing some free speech legislation, but that corridor on that second floor was, or first floor was packed, absolutely packed with grassroots activists from Flathead County, from the Bitterroot, from Missoula, all the way over from Billings. It was packed and the energy was high. It was extremely high. And those guys were heard. They were really heard. The outcome might not have been exactly, what they wanted. It might not have been perfect, but they were heard. That is energy. How do we take an energy like that and how do we keep it going long term across a plethora of issues? That's my question. That's what we're trying to figure out.
So, Isaac, I have to say, you really reeled me in with calling yourself a social entrepreneur. And your last question, how do we get and keep that energy moving? And I've been looking at it from a political stance because I was in politics, right? I've seen it from both sides, just being a citizen, being a taxpayer. And now I see the world differently because I've always been an entrepreneur, but I've always separated business from politics. And I think you might have just hit on something because I mean, if we can apply our entrepreneurial skills and our business acumen to the political realm, I think that's where we're going to do that. That's how we're going to get that energy and keep it going. And I will say, you've identified the problem that Jim and I have identified, and that is why we have the 1776 Syndicate. And it's the same thing that you mentioned on college campuses. Sometimes you get that energy and sometimes you don't. Sometimes, how do you get it and keep it going? And I'll tell you, the first thing is this: consistency. Mm-hmm. And you've aligned yourself with an organization that is consistent, right? They're consistently out there doing it, always pushing. We're going right through summer, and we've noticed a lot of organizations, political organizations, have pretty much shut down for summertime. It's like, it's time to play. It's time to take the time off, go enjoy Montana. They're being individuals, right? But we still have a larger role. We can't take the day off and protect our liberties at the same time. And that is a challenge. So I want to say first, thank you for recognizing the need and answering the call. That's very important. Your service is fundamental to our country, and it's no less service than putting a uniform on and being willing to take a bullet. There's no difference. You have made a sacrifice to do this. So the grassroots staying organized, I think, is going to take what you're doing right now, which is you're not stopping, you're moving forward. So a couple of questions I'm looking through. And by the way, AFP does put out some phenomenal work too. My favorite is the legislative scorecard, right? So, I mean, that's how you track, what you're doing, how you're performing. I love the picture in the very back because yes, that's right. It's I don't know. Can we get in that too far?
No, your background is blurring it out, but I've got one right here. I can hold up that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
the next generation. There's the future.
That's right.
There.
That's right.
So I mean, it's important. But how do we do that? It's going to take my generation to not just settle in their lawn chairs and playing golf because they've earned it, right? Mm-hmm. That's the problem. So you're trying to get the young people activated and motivated. And I'm on the other end of that extreme. I'm looking at the people my age who have basically given up and they're turning the reins over to who knows what. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, at this point, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go enjoy my round of golf, mm-hmm. And so we each have the same mission and how we tackle that. Our grassroots is the same. It's all the individuals out there, but how you reach one segment of that grassroots and how I'm going to reach that other segment, those are the nuts we have to crack. But I think aligning is, all of us conversing, strategizing together, having continual conversations is what's going to move that forward. So that being said, I'm going to give you a chance to plug your groups. I know that AFP, and they're people just like you. You mentioned it's a brotherhood, and I totally get that. It is a brotherhood. Much like 1776, they were a brotherhood too. And I imagine, before 1776, how many conversations were had in coffee shops, one-on-one, couple people together, maybe 3 or 4, and no one else showed up. For how many years, how many months before we got to that point where we had the founding documents? We don't really see all the work that was put in on the grassroots to get where we are. We just assume these great minds came together and boom, here you go. They've passed this on, but it's not that way. So you have meetings, AFP in Missoula, Kalispell, Billings, Bozeman, Helena, Butte, and I know you're plugged into Kalispell and Missoula. Why don't you tell everybody out there how they can plug into these different groups, and tell us a little bit about what you do specifically in Kalispell and in Missoula on the campuses. I think you're working there. And are you also plugged in, secondary question, to the FVCC campus?
Yeah, not currently. Last time I was on that campus, I got kicked off. But that was in the middle of, not the middle, but the tail end of the government COVID lockdowns. So kind of understandable why they wouldn't want random people on campus, but that's a place I've got to get back to, because these universities and colleges can really be an incubator for the next generation. We've seen here in Missoula, we've got a group at the University of Montana we work with, Grizzlies for Liberty, fantastic group. But we have seen out of there, people show up with kind of this goofy attitude of, oh yeah, government's terrible, da 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 da, but they don't really know what's going on. They've never read like Mises or Rothbard or Hayek, like the foundational ideas behind these ideas, behind the sentiment that we hold. And so we could then go in and educate these people on these things that have been well written about throughout the past 150, 200 years. Just some of the greatest writings have come out in just that time frame of really what's going on here. What are these actual ideas that we've got, and how do they work, and how can we implement them? And by doing that, we could take a freshman college student who is really just generally not that political, and stop them before they get indoctrinated with the values of Keynesian economics, all top down, the socialist ideas pushed by Bernie Sanders and other supporters of big government. We could get there before they get indoctrinated those ideas and show them another perspective, right? We could show them Mises. We could show them the Austrian school of economics, free market economics, because some people don't hear about this stuff in college. They don't hear about it in their econ classes. They hear about Keynes and Krugman in their econ classes, and how everything has got to be top down, stimulated by the state, which is not how it works at all. It's completely different. So the point I'm getting at here is that University of Montana produces educators. That's where the educators come out of. They generally come out of University of Montana. That's a huge opportunity to change the culture of this country over the next 100 years. If we can start finding open-minded people who are thinking about these ideas and get them motivated and active with these ideas, with good people, we could potentially be changing the makeup of our educators coming out of this university. That's really the goal there. That's going to take a couple of years to get that set up. It's taken 2 years just to get this group of great people, but it's a small group there. It's taken 2 years to get it to the point where it's at right now. So maybe in another 5 or 6 years, we'll have a serious capability there where we can really be educating the next generation. And if you're interested in, if you've got somebody, a grandkid or one of your kids at the university, put them in touch with me. You can also find Grizzlies for Liberty on Instagram or Facebook, and message them. It'll go to their leadership. But yeah, let me start off by saying anybody who wants to get interested in this stuff I'm about to dive into here about our meetings, You can always give me a phone call. My number is out there. It's 406. Sorry, I'm forgetting it as I'm saying it. 406-461-8490 is my phone number. And you can call me, text me anytime. I'll pick up your call. If I don't, I'll call you back. Leave a message. But I'd love to talk to you, get you connected to this stuff. In Missoula, we meet every Thursday. Right now, we're meeting over at the Come On In. Those meetings are going to kick off next week with a preparedness class. We're going to go over, different methods of survival techniques in food preparation, alternative energy, first aid, self-defense. That's going to be fantastic. And those are every Thursday at 6:30 over there. We always have food for people. Anybody who has worked with us will know that we love to feed you. We will always feed you. Come to AFP meetings, come help us knock doors, come help us at the legislative session, and we guarantee a nice hot meal every time.
I love Isaac. Real quick, I do have your phone number in the chat. I just want to confirm because you gave me some pause. 406-491-8490. 461. Yeah, excuse me. I can't read my own typing. Yeah.
You're all right.
Got it. All right, we got it.
So that's my number. You guys give me a call anytime. If you got people who are interested, feel free to send that number around. I'm pretty open with it. If you're in Kalispell, if you're in Flathead Valley, we meet at every Wednesday over at the Homewood Suites off of, I think that's Hutton Ranch Road, right there over by the theater and Walmart. We meet there every Wednesday at 6:30. I usually get some tacos, local tacos for everybody. And this week we're getting together as kind of a recap. We haven't had a meeting since we won the primary on the June 7th. We're getting back together, having an informal meeting. We're just getting together, having conversations, talking about what our vision looks like for the rest of the summer, because we've got some pretty exciting things that I can't get into on this call because they're not public yet, but we've got some pretty exciting things coming down the pipe with AFP in Montana that are going to drastically change the makeup of our government. It's going to be huge. So we'll be going over that and really how people can work with us and make a difference in Kalispell. And all of these meetings are people coming together without necessarily knowing like how we are going to do this. We don't know how we're going to build a long-term grassroots movement that can change the makeup of government in the United States. We know why we're here. That is the most important part, is to know why. Why are we passionate about this stuff? We can figure out the how. We can figure it out. We can test and learn, try different things. We've got the time, we've got the resources, we're willing to take calculated risks and see what does and doesn't work. That is a huge opportunity. With that, we can't accomplish anything if we don't know each other, if we don't have relationships built with each other, if we don't have bonds around this stuff. Otherwise, it's a bunch of random people in a room listening to me talk about these ideas and where we're going. That doesn't make any sense to me. We've got to get connected. It starts with one person, which leads to two, which leads to three, which then starts to multiply from there. And if we all knew each other, if you had 100 people in the room and they all knew their kids' names, right? How huge would that be? I mean, you go to church and you probably have 100, 200 people at your church and you probably don't know all of them, right? Or even their kids' names. Imagine if you did. Imagine the level of a relationship you would have if you intimately knew people and knew what they were passionate about, knew what they cared about. We used to say know their dog's name in sales. You say, do you know your client's dog's name? And if you don't, then you probably don't have a real relationship with them. And I am not saying that as I've got this figured out. This is something I'm telling myself constantly. Do I really know the people that I work with? Have I built strong relationships with them? Because this cannot rely on one person. We have to get organized as a group. It has to happen. That is the most sustainable way to do this. It makes the most sense if you think about it. And it's effective. It is the most effective way, is getting people together that share a common belief and giving them the tools and the strategies to be able to go out there and accomplish their goals.
Isaac, I couldn't agree more on every count, especially relationship, getting to know people, and that's where it starts, because it's gonna start rebuilding community, number one, and that's where we're gonna get our power. So with that being said, the other component to that is when you're around other people and you're just talking, and it's not just a talking head. When you're having those conversations, you're affecting thought. You're not it goes from, yeah, how's the weather and how the kids been, to real things. How's that gas hitting you at the pumps? Is that affecting your family budget? Have you noticed your 401k going down? We need to make some changes. If we know where people are hurting, we can get them involved. And I like your attitude about you're always going to feed people. If people are hungry, they're not going to pay attention.
That's right.
And I read something recently. It was they feed you crumbs because it keeps you coming back for more, because you're never satisfied. But if you get people satisfied, then you can bond together. Then you can actually strategize. Your mind's thinking clearly. So, just some good tips. You've already brought up some that's strategy. That's strategy to make social change and community change. And if we can all do that in the areas that we operate in, but have that common goal, it's our opportunity then to share what it is we know about economics, about history, about liberty, about socialism and the dangers thereof, to correct some of the misinformation that's out there. So I think what you're doing, we need to find more people to be in lockstep with, and we need to get involved. And you're doing it on the grassroots level. We're on the other end of that also. We're grassroots, but we're also trying to cultivate out of that grassroots movement the people that want to actually get involved with the government portion. So we're all on the same battlefield, but we all have different missions within that battlefield. So we're grassroots, but I want the leaders that are interested in getting into the political realm. So, we're each helping each other unlock our own secrets here. And to me, there's the collaborative message here is we have to keep doing more, keep leaning in.
And work with one thing that sets AFPS apart. And some people don't like this, and that's okay. But we work with anybody to accomplish our goals. If we have a point of alignment with somebody, we will work with them. That means that goes for Democrats, leftists, socialists, communists, Republicans, libertarians. If we have a point of alignment, if we find a Democrat legislator who believes in a foreign policy of realism and restraint, then we will work with them to get good policy passed that accomplishes that goal. In Montana, we've partnered up with the ACLU at times to advance free speech on college campuses. They worked with us to pass a bill. What bill was that? Let me see real quick. But it was a bill that basically eliminated free speech zones, which is what got me arrested in college. It was a bill to eliminate free speech zones, and that was House Bill 218. House Bill 218. And there was another one, House Bill 349, which protects the freedom of association and speech on public campuses. That one, I believe, was or is going to most likely get shot down by the Supreme Court in Montana, unfortunately. But the reason I bring this up is because on both of those bills, they were back to back. 218 was the first one. We went in there, we testified in support. Right behind us was the ACLU testifying in support. They heard what we had to say. It passed through committee. Then we're out in the hallway, friendly with each other, two different political ideologies completely, couldn't be more apart here, but we lined up right here on this issue. So we're here friendly with each other. And then the next bill, 349, which they were opposing, comes up. And so we go in and support it. And they right behind us are against it. And that right there is an unlikely partnership. That's a partnership where we realize that we line up on this issue and not on this issue. So we're going to work with each other here and we'll fight each other over here. And that's not just the ACLU, that's anybody. We will work with anybody to accomplish our goals. It is Frederick Douglass. I would work with anyone to do good and no man to do evil. And that is one of our principles that guides us, is that principle of openness. We've got to be open to different people's ideas. A partisan battle only expands government. It will never shrink government. Two sides competing for the football. You're just going to keep expanding and expanding and expanding, because it's an endless game. That game cannot be won. Once you win, somebody comes and takes it away. Once they get it taken, then they come back and take it away. And it's a constant vicious cycle that will never limit government. It won't do it. We've got to transcend and step out of that two-sided battle and realize that it is people here, individuals here, finding barriers on their everyday life. Those are the people. It is really us organizing to change our government. That's what we've got to do. And we've got to work with anybody who's interested in working with us to accomplish that, or else we won't be as effective as we could be.
Right. Well, I know you might take some heat from that. And we've got some other questions on here. I'm going to open this up where time flies. It's amazing how
yeah, what are we at? Are we running out of time?
No, well, I just want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I do want to open it up to questions. But on that point, I want to real quickly add, in the military, that's called maximum utilization of available resources. That's your obligation. Maximize your use. And if it's an opponent that you can maximize their use of, that's fair game. As a matter of fact, it's your duty to maximize the resources, even if it's an enemy resource. Anyway, that being said, Jim, you had a question. Go ahead and ask Isaac.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac. Look, I'm enamored with your presentation, who you are, especially at such a young age. I wish I knew half the things about government and policies at that age that you are now. So thank you for what you're doing. And as Rod said, it's equally to serving in any branch of the military, maybe worse, because you really are in a fight for our country and you're on the front line. So first easy question is there an age group for your meetings that you host, especially here in Kalispell?
Oh, no, they're open to all ages. I always put at the bottom of my emails inviting people to this. Kids and dogs are welcome at AFP meetings because this is a family organization. I've heard from people, they're like, oh man, I'd love to come, but I've got the kids. I'm like, bring them, we'll feed them. My mom was bringing me to Tea Party rallies when I was a little kid. Wonderful. And to other things. And that was great. So there's no age range. If you are younger, right? If you are younger, it can be difficult, like my age, to come hang out with people that are 50, 60, 70. It can be kind of awkward for people. But right now I don't have a lot of necessarily young people up in Kalispell. In Missoula, we've got a pretty good range. And then if you've got college age people or you're college age yourself, reach out to me and we'll get you connected with our college groups across the state. We've got one at University of Montana, MSU, and I think over in Rocky, in Billings too. Yep.
So one of my initiatives personally as a dad is to get more dads involved, right? Because I think there's been really, the mama bears come out this year, and we got 2 mama bears on the line tonight, and I know they've got great voices for their causes, and I appreciate who they are. And I'd like to see more of that from dads. And so I met with a group of dads today, and in parting with them, they said, Jim, what can we do next, right? And I'm looking to give them some direction, because in my opinion, check writing is no longer enough. We need to check write. We need the funds to do things, but we also need some action steps to go along with that check. Is there a couple items that you would recommend that people that want to get more involved do? And I'll state the obvious, go to your meetings, right? Learn more. But what are some of the first steps for, let's just call them dads, and how they can do more?
Yeah, get with the other dads. Right. That's the first step, is figure out who else is sharing your ideas and get those people organized, have them over for a barbecue, have some beers, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be some crazy formal thing, but base level, you got to understand who your other people are in your fight with you, and you got to know those people. Gotta know that before you can go make policy changes, you gotta build that group of people. Get your why figured out, and then figure out your how from there.
Yeah.
And obviously, I recommend everybody come to our meetings. The third thing I'd say is figure out who your representative is, who your state representative is, your state senator is, city council people, school board member, health board, whatever governing body has the authority over your daily life. I believe that you have an obligation to know who those people are, because as we've seen, they have the power to take that away, to take your livelihood away from you. I would want to know who that person is. I would want to have some type of relationship with that person, because they could be a champion for you too. Somebody like John Fuller, could be a champion in passing a bill that drastically changes education in Montana, gives rights back to parents that they currently don't have.
Great advice. And by the way, we're so fortunate to have somebody like John Fuller, especially in our own backyard. So thank you for recognizing who he is and what he stands for. I'll ask one final question as it relates to what you do. I notice on the website, Americans for Prosperity, there's career opportunities for people. Are those careers where they're actually, decent paying jobs? And obviously there's a lot in different states that I noticed. I'm actually asking for one person in particular that's stuck in Seattle, Washington. She's a reform liberal, and she's looking to make a difference now on our side of the fence. And I know she's aching to figure it out. And, are those real jobs or?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're real jobs. There's a great book. It's called Ethics of Liberty by Murray Rothbard. And we just finished reading that as a team. And in the last part of that book, he talks about the need to have professional activists, full-time professional activists who are out there advocating for these ideas. He really lays it out as the thing we must do. Like, if we don't do that, we will have problems. So these are real jobs. This is all I do. It provides for me. You will not get rich in this stuff. If you want to get rich in this, you should go work for maybe some people that want to expand government. They seem to make all the money. But we're not in this for the money. We're in this for the cause, 100% in it for the cause. So yeah, real jobs. If people are interested, hop on the website, apply. Great people to work for, good benefits. Yeah, real legitimate jobs. Yeah. And we have, if people are looking for, part-time positions, we do elections. We do quite a bit of elections. We had our first year endorsing candidates, obviously with John Fuller up in Kalispell. We had Lynn Hellegard down here in Missoula, who we won by 39 votes. We won that race by 39 votes, that primary. And that is the only reason we won it by 39 votes, is because we had volunteers and part-timers working with us out in the field, knocking doors, making phone calls, taking this message right to the voters. So if people in Flat County, Missoula County, throughout the state are in an area like Missoula or Bozeman or Billings, Great Falls, and want to help us and make money at the same time, my number's in the chat. Reach out to me. We'll grab coffee. We'll get to know each other. Obviously, I can't guarantee anything to anybody, but we do have those opportunities for people that are interested in making some extra cash while advocating for these ideas, while fighting the good fight. It's absolutely an option that's available for people.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Appreciate it. No offense about the real jobs. I guess what I meant was paying jobs, right, where people can make a decision to work there. But thank you for the clarity.
Yeah, no, I didn't take that in any weird way at all, Jim.
Anytime, I understand, because anytime you're in politics, people don't think it's real. There's that, I don't know, there's just something about it. It's got such a bad vibe. It's like used car salesmen, politicians, and that needs to change. And I think, you mentioned it, this is a profession. You need professional activists, professional people on the ground. And I think politicians need to be professional too, but not professional at growing government, professional at protecting liberty. And therein lies the difference. If anyone else has a question out there, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So either raise your hand or put it in the chat and I will get to you. And while we wait, I have to ask Isaac, because I can't see on the screen, what does your shirt say?
Yeah, so my shirt says pay more, get less. Okay, this is part of our True Costs of Washington tour that we're doing across the country right now, trying to show the American people that the poor economic decisions that have been made in Washington for my entire life, at least the last 25 years, have led directly to what you're seeing right now. The inflation, the price at the pump is a big one that we're trying to utilize. This thing that everybody is seeing is affecting every single person in this country right now, is the price of gas at the pump. So we're going around the country and partnering with gas stations and bringing the price of gas down to the price of gas when Joe Biden took office. And we have seen all over the country, we've probably had 20 different events, miles of cars lined up to get this gas, obviously, because it's at $2.30 or whatever it is. But we have all these cars lined up and then they're coming up to get gas while we're talking to them about, hey, here's why we're doing this. Come work with us. Come check out our community meetings. And that's what this shirt means. We're paying more and we're getting less. And it's not because of the market. The free market will always provide the cheapest, best option. It is because our government has really wasted our birthright by printing us into this mess that we're in right now. They've inflated our currency.
You mean it's not Putin's fault?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
And even
Sorry,
I was glad
I had to get in there.
That's right. Yeah. I was glad to see Jerome Powell, the chair of the Fed, in a Senate committee hearing, I believe it was a Senate committee hearing just a week or two ago, actually say that it wasn't Putin's fault.
Right.
And that was because of poor economic decision making, which is spot on. Absolutely.
I have one more question. No one else is throwing their hand up right now. So I have another question. And what you were talking about, one of the groups, one of the meetings that you did where you were actually doing emergency preparedness and that sort of thing. Was that one of your AFP meetings that you were doing that, or was that a different event?
Yeah, it's going to be, I'm putting it together right now. It's kind of an experimental thing because we usually do meetings that are around different policies or different ways people can take action. And I wanted to see what it would look like if we did something that wasn't political here in Missoula. What kind of crowd could we turn out? Would our activists like that? So I'm working on putting together a preparedness class series here in Missoula. Yeah, that's really it's an experiment, so I don't know if it's something that's going to actually work, but we're going to try it out here in Missoula and see what we can do. But yeah, that is one of our AFP meetings.
All right. Well, Samantha, I hope you're taking note here, because Samantha knows a lot of women on both sides of the aisle that are taking the preparedness stuff seriously. So there may be an opportunity even for alignment up here, if depending on how that goes down there, or if you want to run your experiment in two different locations, it might just get more people, more grassroots involved. So, we've got a hand up there. Taylor, if you could unmute.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
Awesome. Well, hey, Isaac, I'm Taylor Claridge, and I'm here in Kalispell. And I just have to say that in the time I've listened to you talk, I've been at swim lessons with my children. I harvested in my garden for dinner for my family. And I drove my kids back home, and I'm prepping dinner and everything. Wow. So I have a quick minute out here, but I just have to say, we can do this. Like, people are, they're making excuses. I don't have the time to get involved. If we believe in it enough, we absolutely have the time. There is a way to do something every day, whether it's small or big or what have you. But I don't so much have a question, but I just want to tell you that I'm so inspired by everything you said. Honestly, I really felt like I should have been taking notes because I could garner from a lot of quotes from you. But something you said at the beginning of your talk was you were talking about advocating for human freedom. And I love that you use those words, because we hear a lot about American freedom, like this is America, we don't do that here or whatever. But really, when you get down to it, what our country was founded on was not American freedom. It was human freedom. It was our God-given right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So I love that you put it that way. And I wanted to tell you because I'm inspired, and I feel like, if you inspire one person with something you say, it's enough to just keep going. So please keep going. You are awesome. And thanks for being here.
Wow. Thanks a lot, Taylor. I appreciate that. And these ideas, these aren't necessarily American ideas. The Declaration of Independence really summed up a lot of ideas that people have had for quite some time that have come from France. The Dutch were pioneers during the Renaissance of prioritizing human freedom over everything else. This is what led to, if you look at most charts, right? The biggest one to look at is like poverty or GDP. You look at these charts, it's like this for a very long time. And then all of a sudden it just hockey sticks up. And that is because people all around the world almost simultaneously started realizing that human freedom is what we need to be focusing on. And there are underlying principles. There are underlying principles on human freedom that make it work. So I'm glad you caught that. And yeah, thank you, Taylor. That was also inspiring.
All right. Well, thank you, Isaac, again. I'm going to be respectful of everyone's time. We did go over just a little bit, but we could go on for hours because we're like-minded and on the same battlefield. So I thank you very much. I'm sure we'll have you back, and I'm anxious to hear how the experiment works out with what you're doing in Missoula. And again, there might be some alignment opportunities up here. So keep that in mind. Thank you very much, Isaac. Thank you, everybody, everyone who's listening in the future. Tap in. We've got work to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.